Guess who just paid $30 for a 12-inch Apple MacBook? That would be me. But this thing apparently does not work, but given the photos I've seen on the eBay listing, I think we've got a chance. So let's take a look. Sometimes laptops are sent in boxes. This one in nothing more than a thin padded bag, which clearly suffered some damage on its way to me. Never ship a laptop in a padded bag with no other packaging. They offer very little protection. The MacBook I bought was already pretty ruined. Somehow it doesn't appear to have got any more ruined. It's missing a keycap, is absolutely filthy, and has the webcam taped over. But apart from that, it seems mostly intact. So let's plug it in and see exactly what functionality it has, if any. Something briefly shows up on screen, and after waiting a moment, it flashes the fold icon, meaning no operating system is installed. With an install USB plugged in, let's begin the installation. Something is definitely wrong with the display though. The weird ghosting effect is pretty distracting. As far as I'm aware, this is a problem with the panel itself being damaged. And after the installation, I was given the option to enable dark mode, which made the experience slightly less horrible. This appears to be the base model with an M3 1.1 GHz processor and 8 GB of RAM. The battery is also not charging, which is quite annoying. That might be due to one of the cells swelling up. The casing is showing signs of bulging outwards a little bit. So this MacBook is pretty terrible, but considering it was only $30, I won't lose any sleep over it. And you shouldn't lose out on sleep either. And with the help of Manta Sleep, you can sleep better and enjoy your life more. Before Manta Sleep reached out to sponsor this video, I hadn't ever used a sleep mask before, but now it's part of my sleep routine. I'm a pretty light sleeper that used to find it hard to get back to sleep once morning light hit. Each mask provides 100% blackout, meaning you're not going to get woken up by bright lights or visual distractions. And now with the help of Manta Sleep, I'm well rested and get more out of every day. Wearing a Manta Sleep mask is super comfortable and it puts no pressure on your eyelids or eyelashes. You can adjust it to make it a perfect fit for yourself. They're made to last, being made from durable materials that are also super soft and breathable. Whether it's hot or cold, Manta Sleep is great when you're trying to catch some Z's in a less than ideal environment. Perfect for a quick nap in the car or during a flight. And each mask includes a handy travel bag. Manta Sleep have masks to suit every body and every scenario. I didn't realize how much sleep I was missing out on until I tried Manta Sleep. If you want to find out more, check out Manta Sleep using my link below in the description or in the comments. And be sure to use my code to get a discount on your next purchase. Before we open it up, let's make it slightly less disgusting. The display surface has seen better days. I don't understand how people can use a device to the point in which the screen looks this bad. With a bit of lens cleaner and a microfiber cloth, we can see it makes a huge difference. And with a bit of eucalyptus oil, I made the keyboard somewhat more sanitary. The outside isn't in bad condition at all, but it likely suffered a drop for the display to get damaged. Opening up one of these MacBooks is pretty easy. Just make sure you have a compatible pentalobe screwdriver. With all the screws removed, gently release the two clips, one on either side. But don't just yank the casing off yet, there are still connectors attached. With the trackpad disconnected, we can turn our attention to the logic board, which is part of the bottom casing. Quite unusual for an Apple laptop. Since the board is far from the edges, a ribbon cable is needed for the USB-C port. There's a similar connector attached to the 3.5mm audio board, which is honestly a nice thing as you could replace it if it was to fail. And finally, we have liftoff. Both halves can now be separated. Here we can see the cell that has bulged, causing the case to expand slightly. At the time of me filming this, every single replacement battery was around $100 Australian apart from one, so I bought it. In anticipation for the new battery arriving, let's remove the old one. You're supposed to push this small button for 10 seconds, and an LED light would come on, if the battery works at all, that is. This will make it safe to disconnect the battery, however ours holds no charge and doesn't work anyway. The speakers and Wi-Fi antennas must be unplugged as the logic board needs to come out for the battery to be removed. With all the screws removed, the board can be lifted up and out. But we are not done yet. We'll need some help from some sticker removal liquid. The battery cells are held down with adhesive. I propped it up so that liquid would make its way to the bottom. Apple would likely argue that adhering the batteries in place is done for space-saving reasons, but why can't the battery be screwed in like in the 11 and 13-inch MacBook Airs? It would be far less painful to remove it that way. Even after softening the adhesive, it still took some effort. The already damaged cell appears to have split slightly, even though it doesn't hold a charge. charge, I felt the best thing to do was to cut it off and put it outside for a while. The rest of the cells did come off with relative ease. Just take your time if you're ever doing this, puncturing them should be avoided. Damaged lithium-ion batteries are a fire risk. I left the center cells until last. I've linked to an iFixit guide in the description if you need a tutorial. Now it is finally out, and I am not a fan of this battery design. A week after buying the battery, I get told by the seller that their product has quality issues and needs to be sent back to the factory, so I just needed a working battery, and I managed to find a genuine used one for a good price that even included the bottom casing. I even made sure to confirm with the seller that the battery was indeed functional. I had to end up shelving this video for several months due to a delay in the first battery getting to me, so that's why you're seeing the old table and house that I'm no longer at. On first inspection, the cells look like they've had a rough time, but the seller did confirm that it was functional, so let's remove the speakers from the old casing as well. They're held on with 2 screws and a bit of tape. Be careful when pulling up the cables, as they would be very easy to break. These speakers also act as Wi-Fi antennas, meaning having one of these as a headless laptop would be pretty easy. I then removed most of the old tape residue on the new casing before I fit the new parts. Given all the debris around the edges, my guess is the bottom casing and battery sat around for quite some time. While I've got the logic board out, it's a good time to apply some new thermal compound to the 5-watt Intel M3 processor, cooled passively by this tiny heatsink. It's using a thermal compound I haven't seen before. It's many years old, but it's still surprisingly malleable. I'm applying some Arctic MX4, which will spread over the die surface once the heatsink is put back on. I do wish Apple had kept using this form factor of laptop. Imagine how much more power it would have if it even had a base M1 Apple Silicon chip. The Intel M3 processor in here is extremely weak and not very good. When starting up the Mac for the first time with a different battery, the iFixit tutorial mentions powering it up with a low wattage 5-volt iPod charger. With it plugged in, nothing appears to happen, no signs of life or boot chimes. How about we try plugging it into my Thunderbolt 3 desk setup? Now we are getting a chime, a keyboard backlight, but no image. Perhaps I didn't plug the display in correctly. It's a very fiddly small connector. We'll see whether reseating the connector does anything. Fingers crossed, and it turns on once again. But the battery we installed doesn't hold any charge at all. The seller kind of lied to me. It attempts to charge the battery, but its condition is replace now, and it doesn't work at all. Given that a replacement display will be several $100s, and I don't have the time or patience to install another battery, what can this very flawed laptop still do? Given that it is powered via USB-C, using it on the go is still entirely possible with a battery bank. It doesn't even need to be a particularly good one since it's such a low-powered device, but can it play basic games? Minecraft is still technically playable, just an eyesore to say the least. Old school RuneScape is a far better visual experience. Darker things on screen seem to make the display look slightly better. This also applies to videos, which are pretty much unwatchable, but this laptop can still play them in 1080p pretty fluidly. The display, while pretty horrible, is still clear enough to type and read documents, but the then new butterfly keyboard is awful to type on and has next to no key travel. What Apple did get right with this laptop is the Force Touch trackpad, which uses subtle vibrations to simulate clicks. I've owned a few of these tiny machines in the past, and while I love the form factor and design, the performance trade-off has always ended up being a deal breaker.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting. Either way, it was good to go back and look at this very weird footnote in Apple's laptop history. It's incredibly small and the form factor I think is really nice, but of course the performance of such a low-powered machine left a lot to be desired. And of course, I think this was the first MacBook that had USB-C as the only port, apart from the headphone jack. Either way, thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.